Hello, Star Wars fans. Today is going to be my breakdown and reaction of Ahsoka Episode 5, and what an episode it was. I loved Episode 4. In fact, it was so good that I worried Episode 5 couldn't top it, but man, I should have had no doubt. This is some of the best Star Wars I've seen in a long, long time. Huge, huge payoff for Clone Wars and Rebels fans. And I've said many times, I don't believe you have to have watched those shows to still enjoy the Ahsoka series. But if you did watch them, the Easter eggs and the callbacks were amazing. So I'm going to go through all the spoilers, make sure you've seen the episode first, but assuming you have, let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Now, I always like to remind that there is a September contest running. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment. We'll choose the winner at random and announce them in early October, and their prize will be one of the books above. Best of luck. Okay, so the episode starts with us seeing the map, which was, of course, destroyed last episode by Balin. And honestly, since he took his lightsaber to it, I thought it was going to be toast. But it's kind of cool that it only was cut in half, so we can see inside that it's really just an old school puzzle. Kind of like in the Hellraiser movies, if you ever saw those, the little puzzle box. Now, of course, Morgan Elsbeth cheated and used her Night Sister magic to solve the puzzle. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see that and just to remember that it's going to be really hard to follow them because the only map is destroyed. And then I love the somber way the episode starts with Huyang holding Sabine's helmet and saying, I told them to stay together, but they never listen. So very cool. Very good way to start. All right, so lots of questions in this episode. So I'm kicking off with a quote from actually the end of last episode, because I think it really bridges this really well, when mysterious voice, which we know is Anakin ultimately, says, I didn't expect to see you so soon. So it raises two big questions. Where is she? And is it really Anakin? Now, honestly, I don't think Filoni gave us a definitive answer, and I don't know if he ever will. He wanted this really to be left up to interpretation. So whatever you think is fine. You may or may not agree with me on these two things. I'm going to tell you what I think, and then why I think it as we go through the episode, but it's fine if you disagree. I would like to know what you think, though. So my answer to the first question is no, she is not in the world between worlds. It looks like it, but instead her memory, she's experiencing a near-death experience. She's basically on death's door underneath the water, and her mind is taking her to memories from the past. So I don't think she's really in the world between worlds. However, I do think Anakin's Force Ghost is there with her, and he's helping her cling to life, teaching her some lessons, and really helping her decide, do you want to live or die? So those are my opinions, but we'll see why I think that as we go through this. Okay, so this imagery, I love it. It's just so beautiful, and there's no doubt it is meant to look like the world between worlds because I think that is where Ahsoka's mind is taking her. She went to the world between worlds in the past, and in fact was saved. Her life was saved last time, as I talked about in the previous episode, by Ezra, pulling her out of a death fight with Darth Vader that he would have killed her. So I think this is why her mind took her there. I love this. Anakin says, you look old. That's so funny because, of course, Anakin would be the same age, but he's been de-aged. So, yeah, very funny. I like that line. And I love the fact, too, that this is his outfit from the Clone Wars. In fact, this was the last time Ahsoka would have seen him before they were separated and before he turned fully to the dark side. But, yeah, look at that outfit. Just picture perfect. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so definitely Anakin, I think, here is testing to see if she's even still alive or if she's, crossing over. Because the very fact that he wants to find out, did you remember what happened? And she says, yeah, I was in a battle with Balin. He says, so you do remember. It means you still have a chance to live. So it means she's hanging on. She's not in good shape, but she's hanging on. But the real question is, does she want to live? Does she want to? So that's what these tests are going to be about. And he's going to her memories are going to take her to two key episodes in the Clone Wars, and each one helps her along with this decision. So this is so cool. All right, so he says, I'm here to help you finish your training, because they never finished their training, which they mentioned earlier in Ahsoka. And he says, one is never too old to learn Snips. I love that he keeps calling her Snips. That was the nickname he gave her way back when they first met, early in the Clone Wars, because she was kind of snippy and insolent. And she didn't really like that nickname, but it stuck. So she's saying, I won't fight you, because he's challenging her. He's trying to get her to fight him. But, I love this. But he says, I've heard that before. So I think this is a good indication that he is indeed the Anakin that died, because he's calling back on his battle with Luke when he fought Luke. And he says, I will not fight you, Father. So it's a nice little callback to Return of the Jedi. And he's saying the same thing. I've heard that before, that you won't fight me. But guess what? You don't have a choice. So ultimately, she has to defend herself. And sure enough, they get locked into a lightsaber battle. All right. So then back on the planet, we get a couple updates. First update is a nice little name drop of Senator Organa, Leia, obviously, says she can only give us cover for so long. So that's really cool. That she's trying to help them, which is nice. All right, then Jacen shows his Force sensibility. I think this is really cool. When he says, "There's something out there, Mom. I can feel it," and she says, "Is it the waves?" And he says, "No. It's the lightsabers." So that tells us a couple things. That there really is a lightsaber battle going on right now. The question is it in the world between worlds, or is it all in Ahsoka's mind? And of course, Vader's ghost, Anakin's ghost, fighting with her in her mind. And Jacen can sense that. I think it's in her mind, but again, however you decide to interpret it is fine. I know some people have been a little upset that Hera seemed to be able to hear it. I'm not 100% convinced she did. I think she just decided to trust Jacen. But even if she did, then that means she used what little bit of the Force sensitivity she has and was able to hear it. But I don't think she did. I think she just trusted him. Then I think this is kind of funny when she says, "Okay, good work, Jacen. Chopper, stay with him." But we know from history that Chopper and people standing near a ledge don't end well. Because you might remember this little droid, it didn't end well when Chopper dumps him over the edge. Now, I don't think he's going to dump Jacen over the edge, but you can't trust that droid. Chopper is not to be trusted, period. Then I love this. This might be my favorite quote of the entire episode. When Tiva is basically like, "What's going on?" And Hu Yang explains, well, his father, Kanan Jarrus, was a Jedi. And he just goes, "Okay." That's just so awesome. He is basically us fans just going, "Okay, sure, it works. That's what they said. I'll trust you." All right, so back to wherever she is, I think, again, in her mind. But this is one big reason I don't think it's a world between worlds, because Anakin basically shows he has a few tricks still up his sleeve, and he cuts the platform she's standing on, so she ends up falling. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't do that in the world between worlds. We don't know, right? We just didn't see anybody try to destroy things. It's certainly possible, I guess. But this is what really makes me think, no, this is not the world between worlds. It's in her mind, because she falls, but then ends up falling through the mist and ends up going back to a memory. So again, I think this is her mind. So now we have Clone Wars Ahsoka, and I love this, played by the same actress that played young Gamora in Infinity War. Way cool. Well, you can see it. You can see it in her face, right? Just way cool. She did a great job as young Ahsoka. So this appears to be a memory of one of the first battles in the Clone Wars, Season 1, on Ryloth. Because she says, "This is one of our first missions. Why are we here?" And then Anakin doesn't really answer. He says, "Got to keep up." But the reason I think that it's probably Ryloth is, notice the Twi'lek over on the far left, and that, of course, is Hera's race, because you can see his head there. And again, that was one of the first battles in the Clone Wars, Season 1. And then Ahsoka, this is really cool, feels the pain of the lost life. She really cares. She cares that the clones, even though they were just bred for battle, still, they gave their lives. And this is important. In that first mission, if you had seen the Clone Wars episode, you would know she was kind of responsible for some of them dying. She made a bad decision, and some of them died as a result. So she's really feeling the pain of this. So Anakin approaches, and I love it. He's perfectly in his Season 1 Clone Wars garb, or many seasons, really. He wore the same garb, but from Season 1 for sure. You can see it there and compare it. Love it. Just looks so incredible to see this in live action. But here's the key. Ahsoka feels really bad. She says, "They were following my orders. I got them killed." And this is one of her first lessons that Anakin is trying to help her with. As a Jedi, it's our job to lead. That doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. But now, to win this war, I have to teach you to be a soldier. So what he's really doing here with this lesson is teaching Ahsoka, you can't be afraid to train Sabine for the fear that Sabine might get hurt. She may. Others may get hurt and killed even. But that doesn't mean you can't still get involved. You have a mission. You have a responsibility. And that's what he's basically helping her overcome here. Yes, you can be her master, and she can be your Padawan. Don't be so afraid of losing her that it makes you unwilling to teach. And then this is what's really cool. If you go back and watch the episode, the one that they're referring to, the Battle over Ryloth, she's saying the same thing, right? She's saying, I lost so many of my pilots. And he's saying that's the reality of command. So, I mean, Filoni's a genius. I mean, obviously he knows every one of his episodes back to front, by heart, every bit of it. But still, for him to reference this particular battle, that's why. Because Anakin was trying to teach her the same lesson in this episode. Yes, some people died under your command. Yes, it happens, and it's terrible. But you have a mission to do. We have a war to fight. You have to be willing to accept that loss, and that you even may be responsible for it. So I love that he was trying to teach her this lesson in the episode, and now that's why I think this particular memory, is the one that was brought back. So cool. So then she says, is that all I'll have to teach my own Padawan one day? Oh, no. No, you have another lesson, another even more important lesson to learn. So basically, he doesn't answer. He just walks off. But the hint to the lesson is the fact that he's shifting from Anakin to Vader. We'll see why as we go further into this, but there's a bigger lesson to learn. Okay, so speaking of Anakin, I love this line when Hera asks Hu Yang, what was he like? What was Anakin like? And he pauses, thinks, and says, intense. Beautifully describing Anakin. All right, so then we jump to the next vision. And this time, we go all the way to the end of Clone Wars. So at first I thought, oh, Filoni's doing this because it's kind of cool. We'll go to the beginning of the Clone Wars and the end of the Clone Wars. Yes, I do think that's part of it, but there's more. So this is the Siege of Mandalore. You can see the horns on the Mandalorian, which in this case, we call them sometimes Maul-Delorians because they were loyal to Maul. So we in fact, here's a close-up of one. Oh my gosh, so cool to see them in live action. In fact, there we go. There's from the episode, from Clone Wars episode. You can see the horns on the guy putting his helmet on. So yeah, to see them in live action is so cool, so very cool. And then, of course, this also involved Bo-Katan, because this was the battle to reclaim Mandalore. So what I like is Filoni is, sure, referencing things that if you didn't see Clone Wars, then you didn't see them firsthand. But in Mandalorian Season 3, we got all this backstory. You really understood Bo-Katan and the Darksaber, etc. So very cool that Filoni is pulling from things that he kind of already hinted at pretty strongly in Mando Season 3. Okay, so this is cool too. Her outfit looks perfect because that's her outfit from that same episode. Look at how well that was done. I love it. And of course, there she is in her pose with her double lightsabers. This is fascinating too because once again, Filoni's a genius. I think he picked this episode for multiple reasons. So this is where Ahsoka learns Anakin's fate, or at least Maul telling her about his fate, and then she's soon to learn Maul was right. Because Maul was a main part. Remember I said Maul-Delorians. This big battle was Maul leading the Mandalorians against Bo-Katan and against Ahsoka. And he says, Anakin, has long been groomed for his role as my master's new apprentice. So basically he's going to turn to the dark side. And Ahsoka says, you lie. And this is so wild. He says, I see the Padawan needs one more lesson. Isn't that wild? Well, Maul's not going to teach her the lesson, that's for sure. But what a wild line, right? To be in the same episode being referenced in this vision of Ahsoka's. But more importantly, what Ahsoka learns in this lesson is, at the same time that she's fighting Maul and Bo-Katan's fighting Maul, Anakin is turning to the dark side because Order 66 is happening. That's why Ahsoka feels so bad that it's her fault. It's her fault. Had she been with Anakin or had Anakin been with her, maybe she could have prevented it. Maybe she could have stopped it. So that's the big lesson to be learned here. Now, it's really cool that Captain Rex shows up in this case because he was helping her during that battle on Mandalore. He was critical. So yeah, when he says, we'll secure the perimeter, come on, let's go. That's Tamara Morrison's voice. Love it, love it, love it. And to see him in live action is so cool. There he is in the episode. Perfectly done, perfectly done. And again, he shows up because he was one of the main people helping along with Bo-Katan as Ahsoka Tano took on both Maul and the Mandalorians. So this is fun. Anakin actually says, I don't know this battle. And he doesn't, because again, he was off, doing Order 66 while this battle was happening. But that's kind of cool because his Force Ghost wouldn't necessarily have known this battle. In fact, I don't know how that works. If you're a Force Ghost, do you suddenly see all of time and history? I don't know. I doubt it, but maybe you can see backwards in time. But anyway, he's definitely telling her, I don't know this battle. And she then confirms this was the siege of Mandalore. Then this is what's cool. He says, you're a warrior now, as I trained you to be. So she's learned that first lesson, right, from the first vision that she had of being unwilling to be a warrior and unwilling to fight. However, now she's very worried. Well, first of all, yeah, isn't that great? I love the pose. Let's focus on that for a minute. So cool. So cool. Right out of the episodes. The double arms crossed. But anyway, now this is what she's so worried about. She says, but my part of that legacy, of your legacy, Anakin, is one of death and war. Because, remember, she learned from Maul in this very episode that Anakin was going to turn. So she's really focused on that. This was the moment when it all came crashing down. She says, you are more Anakin, but more powerful and dangerous than anyone realized. So she's taking responsibility for him, feeling like that's her fault, but also she's afraid she's going to turn to the dark side. She's afraid she's going to become like him. So she even says, if I am everything you are, and she doesn't finish because he decides, no, you're not learning the lesson. The lesson wasn't be afraid you're going to turn to the dark side. There's a bigger lesson. So he punts her right back into the world between worlds, where again, we see this transition. And I think that is her fearing, this is going to be me. This is going to be me. I'm going to turn into Vader. So the real question is, will she resist the urge to kill? Because Anakin now has got the red eyes. This is like he's full on dark side. And what's she going to do? When she gets the upper hand with him, is she going to kill him? Or is she willing to say, no, I choose to live? So more than just I choose to live, she's saying, I can overcome this. I see it now. I don't have to become you. And by the way, you became something good in the end, but I don't have to make that transition to dark and then light again, to good again. I choose to live. So it's a double meaning of I choose to actually come back to life again under the water. I choose to cling to that life, rather. But also, I want to live. I actually want to live because I see a better future. So that's really cool. He realizes finally, hey, there's hope for you yet. You learned your lesson, which is awesome. And by the way, we really did see hints of this in the previous episode when Baylan said, few would live to see what he, Anakin, became. Surely that must leave a mark. So he was even reminding her of, hey, this is your fault, right? You're to blame for Anakin. And that triggered these fears that she might turn to the dark side because, remember, when Shin showed up, Ahsoka force grabs her and chucks her into the rock. Now, that, of course, ticks off Baylan, but also that must have made Ahsoka worried. Maybe I am turning to the dark side. Maybe this is who I'm going to be. And, of course, Baylan says your legacy, like your master's, is one of death and destruction. So he's basically saying you're going to be just like him. And that's the lesson she had to learn. That's the lesson that Anakin was really teaching her, was you don't have to fear becoming like me. I love that. I love that. And it goes back perfectly to that Siege of Mandalore episode. So then it's kind of like she gets a symbolic baptism. And I don't necessarily mean from a religious standpoint, because baptism isn't just from a religious standpoint. It's basically going under the water and coming up a new person. So she goes under the water in her vision, in her dream, which again, I don't think is the world between worlds, but just my opinion, and then comes back to life under the water. She regains that will to live. And of course, they rescue her. So really cool. Really, really cool. I thought this was wild. You kind of forget she wears a headband, right? So it was weird to see her without one, but that is what she looks like, how her skin transitions there. I thought that looked really cool. All right, so this was fun. Nice. Hu Yang always gives us a little bit of humor. When Hera basically sends Jacen off to the ship so that Hera and Ahsoka can figure out the next plans, he's talking to Hu Yang, and he asks Hu Yang, "You have a training room on your starship? Will you train me?" "No." "Well, do you know how to build a lightsaber?" "Yes." "Will you teach me?" "No." Hu Yang. He rocks, man. David Tennant rocks because he's, of course, voicing him. All right, so then this is really cool. Ahsoka uses force whispers, if you will, to get it to see if it might have left an impression, so she can figure out what happened, like a memory, she says. So kind of a wild ability. They don't use that real often, but yeah, she's actually able to hear what happened and hear Sabine taking off with Morgan and everyone else. Then I normally love a Mon Mothma visit, but not this time. Come on, Mon Mothma, you got to back them up. She says, Hera, the Senate's Oversight Committee is going to determine if your command should be permanently suspended. Ouch. So I suspect it won't be ultimately, but still, it just shows how much of a sacrifice Hera made in coming here. And I really liked Hera in this episode. I've enjoyed her the entire time, but I thought she really shined in this episode. All right, so hey, you don't have a map? No problem, because they're going to catch a ride with the Purgles, right? So they talk about the fact that that's their only answer. And then I thought this was fun. You get a little far, far away quote when Jacen understands they're going to ride the whales, and he says how the whales took Ezra and the bad guys far, far away, which is pretty cool because this is a second galaxy far, far away. That's where they're headed. So yeah, time to catch a ride. Those things look so cool. And what? Ahsoka just can't stay in the ship, can she? That's dangerous. Stop it. But this time she doesn't have to have a suit because they're within the atmosphere. But yeah, she's able to call out to them, as we've seen her several times, be able to be in touch and in tune with animals. So very cool. In fact, the first Tales of the Jedi episode, if you haven't watched those, well worth watching those because there's just 6 total and only 3 with Ahsoka. And we see even early on as a little child, she's able to communicate with animals. And wow, this is a pretty big animal. They look so cool. So stinking cool. And they convince it, yeah, we'd like to hitch a ride. And just like in Finding Nemo, but also Jonah and the Whale, Pinocchio, however you want to look at it, they head in. Wild. Very wild. So then we get some of the New Republic, again, showing how frustrating they are, saying, explain the nature of your mission or I will see to it you're stripped of your rank. And she's talking, of course, to Tiva. And Tiva says it perfectly. Okay, but you're not going to believe me. And sure enough, they don't have to believe for long because the Purgles go right by the New Republic ships. So freaky. That was hilarious. And then I love how they're getting ready to initiate their jump to hyperdrive, and boom, they're gone. And now I truly think she is Ahsoka the White, which if you've been hearing that on the internet or on Twitter, that's really a reference to Lord of the Rings, which I think everybody's probably seen Lord of the Rings. If you haven't, go watch it. It's incredible. But you remember how Gandalf basically died, and he was Gandalf the Grey, but when he came back, he was Gandalf the White. Well, I think that's what we're signifying with, in fact, notice his staff even on the right, the white staff. But I think that's what's being signified with Ahsoka. She's now been reborn and is ready to fulfill her legacy. But also, I'm even more convinced that this was a retcon of Rebel Season 4, the end of Rebel Season 4. Because remember, we have Ahsoka showed up, and she was wearing gray, and that was in the Ahsoka episode. But if you look at the final episode of Rebels, she was in white. I think Filoni decided to say, you know what? I want the white transition to be drawn out. Like, I want to explain why she's Ahsoka the White. So he basically said when she showed up, she was actually in gray. So all he really retconned is what she was wearing. I think that's it. But so I do believe that the Ahsoka episode is that Rebels conclusion. Now we saw over a 5 episode arc how she became Ahsoka the White. I love that. Let me know what you think in the comments. But I'm just 1,000% convinced they retconned the end of Rebels with her outfit, and so that we could see her transition. And notice she's even got the staff, the kind of the Gandalf staff there. Very, very cool. And then I'm just going to throw this out there, but is it possible that there was a small crossover with Mando Season 3? Remember, at the beginning of Mandalorian Season 3, they pass by Purgles, a bunch of Purgles taken off. And Baby Yoda reaches out, Grogu, sorry, I still call him Baby Yoda, reaches out his hand almost to communicate with them. And I think it was more, he might have sensed Ahsoka, because he knows Ahsoka. And the reason I'm really convinced that at least they're happening in parallel is this article, which I think I'd seen this before, but I forgot about it, which had Bordizzo, the actress that plays Sabine, said, I think it's hard not to feel part of something bigger because Ahsoka runs along the same timeline as Mandalorian Season 3, and the shows are all connected. Well, if that's true, if Ahsoka does run along the same timeline as Mando Season 3, that could be a little crossover. I love that. I love that. That's so cool. Star Wars Meg, by the way, came up with this idea. She has a great channel if you've never watched it. But yeah, very, very cool. Very, very cool. All right. So I've talked a little bit again about the timeline. I'm more and more convinced that Ahsoka and Mando Season 3 are happening at the same time. I still just don't know when. Maybe at 11 ABY? I don't know. Will they please tell us? Please. And then I did mention Tales of the Jedi again. The one with Ahsoka there it's actually the first episode, but it's the third in the timeline. And notice it's when she was born. So I would strongly recommend, it's not a big investment of time. If you haven't seen it, watch the 3 episodes with Ahsoka at least. All right, there you go. Don't forget, we do have the September contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and winner announced in October. And then also, love to have you join the Discord. You can see us here talking about this very episode. And I will leave a pinned comment with a link so you can join the Discord if you're interested. Also, if you don't mind, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we will all eagerly await Ahsoka Episode 6.